All right. Hi again, everyone. Good evening and welcome back. Thank you for attending tonight's meeting. To ensure that this meeting is accessible to all CSC members, residents, and members of the public, we'll be providing instructions on how to choose the correct language channel on Zoom. If you are a monolingual English speaker, please select the world-like interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen and then select English. If you're using a Zoom via a telephone or a tablet, you're going to select the 3 dots to see more options. So it's going to look a little bit like these 3 dots at the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, followed by interpretation and then English. I will now pass the mic over to Lingüística to review these instructions in Spanish.
Thank you. Buenas tardes. El día de hoy tenemos el servicio de interpretación disponible para ustedes. Si se están conectando desde una computadora, en la parte de abajo del menú de Zoom van a ver el icono de un globo. Lo pueden seleccionar y seleccionar español y luego silenciar audio original. Y si se están conectando desde un dispositivo móvil o de una tableta, por favor toquen su pantalla, seleccionan los 3 puntos, interpretación de idiomas, español, silenciar audio original y para finalizar su opción, seleccione finalizado, terminado o listo. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana, for reading those instructions in Spanish. Now that we are on the correct channel, we're going ahead and continue on to the next slide. So hello again, everyone, and good evening once again. Thanks so much for joining us at our March Chapter Community Steering Committee meeting. I hope that you've all been keeping warm and dry during this past week. My name is Vanessa Gomez, and I will be co-facilitating today's meeting with my colleague, Amy Ramos. And I am also joined by Jessica Olson from the Air District, as well as my colleague, Martinez, Laura Martinez, and we'll be taking notes tonight and providing technical support as needed. As you know, Amy, Laura, and I are available to help with technical support and to keep track of the action items throughout the meeting. We ask that you don't hesitate to reach out to our team with any questions by raising your hand or via the chat. We recognize that folks may have different preferences for how they'd like to engage during meetings, and so we encourage you to engage with us in the way that feels the most comfortable to you. We do not have a co-host tonight, and we continue to encourage anyone who is interested in co-hosting for a CSC meeting to let us know so that we can support you and make that happen. As a reminder to you all, our co-hosts decide the level of participation and facilitation that they will have during the meeting. Us at Harder & Company and the Air District will work closely with you to ensure that the co-host feels prepared before and during the meeting. Additionally, if you have any recommendations on how to best encourage CSC members to become a co-host, we ask that you please send them our way. We want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here with us today. We value your ongoing commitment and your engagement in this process, and it is because of you that your community will be able to develop and implement new strategies to monitor air quality and help reduce health impacts. And at this time, we'd like to remind everyone to please make sure that they are connected to the right language channel if you aren't already. To ensure community input and participation at today's virtual meeting, we ask that you please adhere to the following commitments. So before we get started, please mute yourself and make sure that your full name and organization are showing as your screen name. To change your screen name, please click on the top right side of your picture or video. CSC members may use this naming convention, CSC-first name, last name, for example, CSC-Jane Doe. If you're a resident, you can use first name, last name. And all other participants may use the naming convention first name, last name, affiliation. For example, Jake Smith -AD. The Air District or the AD or CARB may use AD or CARB. The general public may use P as their affiliation, and all the organizations, please feel free to write your organization name. Please note that the meeting hosts may update your screen name during this meeting. As for the virtual meeting ask that we have for you all, we ask that you please stay on mute unless you are speaking. or you plan to speak, we ask that you use *6 if you're participating by phone. We ask that you raise your Zoom hand to ask a question during a presentation question and answer session. You may use *9 if you're participating by phone. Residents in the stipend program should stay for at least 75% of the meeting to be eligible for a stipend. And we'd like to remind you all that that is 90 minutes of a 2-hour meeting. As a reminder, before I continue on to the agenda, does anyone have any questions before we move on to the next slide? Okay, I'm not seeing anything at this moment, but please feel free to raise your hand or add anything in the chat if you do have any questions. As a reminder, the agenda topics for today's meeting are representative of the topics requested by CSC members. In other words, these are topics that are requested during the last CSC meeting in February or during the most recent agenda setting meeting that occurred a couple of weeks ago. Today's agenda topics are designed to provide updates on action items from the previous meeting. We're going to share an update on SERP measures, including an update on incentives measure progress and next steps for the sidewalk, bike path, and paving projects, a review of feedback from residents on their suggestions for vegetative barrier locations, and solicitation of additional questions that the CSC may have about the current open RFP, standing updates, and last but not least, public comment. Now that we've gone through the agenda items, I'd like to introduce Jessica Olson from the Air District for welcoming remarks. Jessica, please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Vanessa. This is Jessica Olson. I am the Director of Community Strategies and Resources with the Air District. And I'd like to welcome you all and extend the same thank you that Vanessa just gave for spending your evening with us. We're really excited to take the topics that were discussed at the agenda setting meeting and provide some updates and solicit feedback tonight. So I'll just stop there and definitely encourage folks that are interested in co-hosting to help us out. It really does make this much more of a collaborative effort, and definitely encourage folks, you do not, as we've noted in the past, and I think folks have helped us out in the past, we encourage folks, whether you're in the Spanish speaking channel or the English speaking channel, to volunteer to co-host. We can support and would love to support anyone who's interested that's on the CSC. So thank you, Vanessa, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Jessica, for those opening remarks. Next, I'd like to take a moment to remind everyone that in addition to contributing to the monthly CSC agenda items, you are more than welcome to spend more time on items or table items on this agenda if you wish to at any time. We'd like to remind you all that this is your meeting, so we want you to make sure that you know that you have a say in how each meeting progresses. I will now pass the mic over to my colleague Amy to introduce the action items tracker.
Thank you so much and welcome everyone. Glad that you all made it. It's really nice to see the time change. I don't know about you all, but I was confused that it's still bright and we're starting our meeting this evening. So welcome everyone to the new schedule. Want to start off with a review of the action items, and want to remind folks that in the last meeting, we all decided that we wanted to push back the readout of all the action items, and we sent them via email. So they're always posted on the website. So I'll put the link in a moment on the chat. You all have access to it, and you get an email in your inbox that gives you a link to the action item tracker. So as part of ensuring that the implementation of AB617 is transparent and that we can hold all of us accountable in implementing what we commit to, the action item tracker provides us a really nice overview of what we decide needs to become noted in a meeting, and then we get to hear on updates of implementation. So at this time, when Zong provides an update, please feel free to drop any questions that you might have in the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you, because if you haven't seen the documented action items from last meeting, they might feel new to you, or maybe they weren't phrased the way that you remember. So we're happy to provide any clarification or any updates that you might have. In addition to that, as we started practicing last time, we're going to take general public comments at the end of the meeting. But if the public does have a question or a comment or concern about any of the items that we're discussing, we take those questions during the agenda item after CSC members have had a chance to provide their questions and clarification. So with that said, I'm going to pass it to Zong to provide us a review of the action item tracker and share her screen.
Hi, good evening. And of course, sorry, my dog just wanted to say hi to everyone. His name is Duncan. Thank you so much, Amy. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And like Amy shared, we do have a running action items tracker here. And I wanted to kind of remind everyone where they can find it. This is the, oh, sorry, this is Urban Lamont. Let me switch it to Shafter. So on the community page for Shafter, you can find it always right here. So you can just click here, and when you do, a new window will open and you will get the running action items. And this will be what you see. Can everyone see it okay? Can I get a thumbs up? Awesome. Okay, so from the last meeting, there are a couple items that wanted to give everyone some updates on. So the first one was a request for a follow-up on our general funding, and there were some questions from the revenue on violations and how much return of the fees returned back to the community. And the district wanted to share that the penalty dollars do not cover the expense of all air quality improvement services that the district provides throughout the valley. And so they are added to the district's general fund with other sources of revenue to ensure that the district's services are equitably provided. The next one is an update to the action items tracker. There was a little bit of discussion last time on the action items tracker that you're seeing now. And with that feedback, we wanted to let everyone know that we will continue to utilize this tracker and post the action items. And in the meantime, we'll also explore other ways that might also be a good way to show the action items tracker in the future. The next action item is was a request for the ROAR guidelines, and that the ROAR guidelines be sent out to the CSC, and they were sent out in a follow-up email that was sent on February 21st. So let us know if you need that ROAR guidelines sent out again. We'd be happy to resend that out. The next two items are, there were follow-up requests about the residential air filtration measure, as well as a vegetative barriers measure. Wanted to get some updates on that, on those two measures, and both of them will be part of today's meeting. And that really was the end of the action items from last month, but I did want to bring up one quick one that wanted to share with everyone, and that was about our membership renewal. If you remember, we had a little bit of an audit back in September, where we requested CSC members to complete an online renewal form. And those that didn't, we followed up with phone calls as well as additional emails, just wanting to make sure the contact info that we had for everyone was still current. And during that process, we received feedback from 4 members. 3 were residents and 1 was the EJ advocate, letting us know that they wanted to go ahead and resign or could no longer participate due to their schedules. And if you wanted more information about the process, you can always click on this link here. We put together a little quick summary so that if you wanted to see the whole process, then you can find out more about that. And that is pretty much here. And I'm going to go ahead and see if there were any questions before I move on to the next item that I wanted to share.
I'm not seeing any questions, Zong. I think you can go ahead and share.
Okay. So the next one I wanted to let everyone know about. Let me stop share and switch my screen. Is that we are going to start this week. We're going to try our texting system. And so we're going to send out a test text this week. And so wanted to let everyone know that when you receive this text, it will look like this this box right here. You'll get it. It'll look like a text right here, simple text, and then you can click on the link. And when you click on the link, it should pop out, and you'll get this type of window on your cell phone. And so when you do, you can either save that phone number, and we recommend saving it and just maybe naming it like Valley Air District, so that any future text messages, you'll know that it's coming from us. And for the most part, these text messages will be for like reminders for the main CSC meetings and for events that are AB617 related. And just a reminder that these are text messages, so these are one-way communication. So if you try to respond back to that text message, we will not see it. If you want to let us know about anything, please just email us or call us, and that way we can get your message. And if you get these text messages and no longer want them, just type in stop and you will no longer get them. But if you do that, just know that your number will be dropped, and the only way to add you back on there would be to let us know. You would have to either email us, call us, and let us know. We will manually add you back into the system. And for right now, those that will be receiving it, the text messages will be those that during the renewal process, there was a question that asked if you were interested in receiving text messages, then go ahead and mark a yes. And those that did mark yes, then those would be the ones that will be receiving these text messages. Did anyone have any questions?
I have a clarifying question, Zong. So I see there's a couple public members on today's meeting, and there might be folks watching on YouTube. So if people would like to be added to this list, are they able to do that? And if so, how?
I think we can do that. Yeah. Okay. So we started, Jamie, and Jamie, chime in. Maybe you might know a little bit more.
I think what we'd maybe like to do though is maybe give us some. So this is brand new, and I hate to say it, but you guys are our test group, our pilot group with these text notifications through this automated system we have. So I think once we maybe had it up and running for about a month, then we'll point you to where you can go to our website and sign up. But for right now, since we're just kind of testing it out, we're going to use that little group that kind of self-identified as being a community steering committee member and also wanting to receive texts. Once we try it out and get feedback from some of that group, we'll definitely open it up. But for the time being, for right now, it's just going to be similar to stuff that you might get in an email, were you also signed up for email. But we definitely will open it up to everyone once we're no longer in the kind of pilot test phase. I almost said the guinea pig, but I don't know. I think that's still okay.
Thank you, Jamie. Great. And so I see a question from Michelle as well.
The text says, I probably checked no because I didn't know really what that meant at that time. Will it be different information than what the emails will be, or will it just be more at your hands situation, just the same information, just a different device?
It'll be the same information, just different device. And our hope is probably to do these text messages maybe the day of, so that it's more immediate. So that way, because our reminder emails come out like a couple of days beforehand. So, this will be just another way, but it will be pretty much the same information that you already receive in our emails. I think that was it. Any other questions? I don't see any more hands. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Zong, for those updates. And what an exciting opportunity to try this new platform. Love how you all are digitizing and connecting with folks. So with that said, I'm going to pass it back to Vanessa to walk us through our next agenda item.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Zong, for walking us through the action items tracker. Our next item is a high-level timeline for the implementation of the CERP, or the Community Emission Reduction Program. You've all worked hard to provide your input into the CERP and collaborate with the Air District to continue moving these projects forward. This momentum will continue if there's a clear vision for both the community as well as the Air Districts. I want to acknowledge that while this is not a perfect process, this is the process that we have in place now. And it's important for the CSC to continue to voice their concerns. And we ask that you all listen closely to the information that is being provided and enter questions or comments into the chat if you have them, so we can have a written record of these. Today's CERP measures update will include a discussion on incentive measure progress, as well as an update with additional details on next steps for sidewalk, bike path, and paving projects. Jessica, would you prefer questions during your presentation or after?
During, and I'll kind of pause and ask the question after a couple of slides.
Okay, wonderful. That sounds great. Before you start your presentation, can you please share a few words with the CSC about what the goal of tonight's presentation is?
Absolutely. Thank you, Vanessa. Yes, so tonight, it's been a while. If you recall, several times last year, we had occasional meetings where most of the meeting was running down really the information we give you all ahead of the meeting, which is that giant CERP tracker. But it's sort of a lot to take in. There are a lot of measures, and particularly for incentives where we need some constant sort of feedback. We just wanted to make sure we had a place where we could update you generally about them. So tonight we have two measures that we have really detailed updates for, at least during this presentation. And then we've highlighted a couple of measures that I'm going to pause and just kind of give you a little bit of a broader update on. But for the most part, we're just going to walk through, and it's more of a question and interactive exercise. So that's really the goal tonight, is to make sure everyone's just up to date. There's a lot of information that we give to you every month, so we wanted to make sure we verbalized some of it occasionally.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jessica. Oh, and apologies if anyone hears any background noise. Are there any questions from the public before we continue on to the presentation? I'm not seeing any for the moment, so Jessica, feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Perfect. And just Vanessa or Dr. Ramos or Zong, as always, feel free to interrupt me if it feels like there's a question I'm not noticing or addressing. So once again, welcome everyone. I'm going to start with a couple of detailed updates on some actions that have been recently taken that we wanted to make sure you're aware of. For each of these, I'm going to take questions during these slides, so feel free to ask questions. The first is just really exciting. The residential air filtration measure, which, as you know, was a new measure that you all supported moving funding into because it was not originally a CERP measure, would provide free residential air purification devices to residents within the AB617 boundary. So actually in February, right after we updated you all and got sort of feedback from you all, we officially got approval from our governing board to take this measure and move it forward and create that program. So just a couple of updates, and some of these are even newer than we made these slides. We officially have CARB approval as well. So the two major hurdles after getting CSC support have been accomplished. And so next thing we need to do for this, and we've talked about it a couple of times, and we had really detailed slides last month, is release an RFQ. And really that means request for quotation. Really what that means is that we just need to make sure we have someone who can distribute or get out all of those air purification devices to folks. So we're really excited, and that's something we hope to develop and release this month. And before summer, so really we're hoping by the end of May to start two different types of events, because you all gave us feedback that you'd want those. One was to do direct to consumer, so mail it directly to people, just like the pilot program that we did the last summer. And also the second being in-person distribution events. So this is just an update based on last month of kind of the major progress we've made. And I do see Michelle's hand, so I'm happy to answer any detailed questions.
Well, I was the Clean Air Room pilot program. I received one of those units, and I just kind of wanted to give you an update as we're looking at for people to supply these units. The Perfect Air Purifier, the only that has 2 filters in it, and you cannot find them anywhere except for on Amazon.
Okay.
And the one that you replace annually is like a $40 filter. And the other one that they want you to replace quarterly is about, you get 4 filters for like $37. But we couldn't find them anywhere else but Amazon. They might have had them at Walmart, but the price of them were much more expensive and couldn't seem to get further to it.
Okay.
And so it's something when we look at, because if you have to change them, depending on how often you have to change them, they suggest quarterly, but on some of the machines, sometimes they give you a light that tells you it's time to change it, which would maybe better, because if you don't have a less dirty year or whatever, not, that might be a better thing. But we want to make sure that whatever we look at, we can still get filters for 2 years later, and doesn't take rebuying that unit over 3 times.
Right. No, thank you, Michelle. That makes a lot of sense. I will say, just to go into details about the request for quotations, and I appreciate this is great feedback. One of the things we will look for, because we did a pilot program, that's the exact feedback we needed and the exact information we wanted. One of the things we will look for this time, because we're developing the program differently, is exactly what Michelle just described. So we're going to be making sure we can get the best device for the cost. So making sure we can distribute as many as possible. We will also be including an extra replacement filter, but to Michelle's point, this is really good feedback to make sure we also include maybe if something is a little more, maybe the filter itself or the device itself is a little more costly, but the filters are, more affordable and easier to replace. That can be a factor we take in. So that's great feedback.
And maybe our local hardware store, we have 2 of them, maybe one of them or both of them could supply. If we bought 1 unit, maybe they could have something they could supply that we could actually go and get instead of ordering it. Some people don't like to really do that.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. And I do see Ana Valle's hand and then Linda.
Buenas tardes, soy Ana Valle. ¿Me escuchan? Sí, gracias. Con referente a el programa, yo pensaría que es bueno si, por ejemplo, voy a empezar por el principio, ¿verdad? Para darme a entender. Yo también tengo ahora mismo uno de los aires que dieron y sí trae 2 filtros. Y quiero que sepan que está muy agradable, muy buen filtro, me gustó mucho. Nada más que no sé si los miembros sepan, pero se suponía que el correo a mí me había enviado, ya me había dejado el filtro en mi purificador de aire cuando no me había llegado. Volví a llamar, me lo volvieron a mandar supuestamente, y supuestamente ustedes tenían el récord que yo ya tenía uno y el correo no me lo había dejado. Entonces, sí, pero sí, ahora se aseguraron de que sí me llegara, pero eso me da a pensar que podría quedarse muchas personas sin su purificador de aire. Por ejemplo, así como a mí el correo supuestamente me lo había dejado y no me lo había llegado. Entonces, para mí pensaría que es mejor que sea en persona, entregar filtros en persona, porque el correo a veces deja productos o cosas en otro lugar y no precisamente todos vamos a tener uno de esa manera, porque en el correo se pierden muchas veces muchas cosas. Yo pensaría que sería bueno hacer el programa en persona. Y pues de todas maneras va un récord de quienes lo tienen, las casas, las direcciones, y si las personas no se presentan, pues comunicarse con ellas y tal vez hacérselo llegar por correo. Pero a mí por mi experiencia, yo pensaría que es mejor que se hiciera como se hicieron las cortadoras de zacate. Ese es todo mi comentario.
Thank you. And definitely, I think that's the exact feedback we want. We definitely want to do both, because we also want to acknowledge that not everyone can make it maybe to an in-person event. We definitely are in-person ones. We want to do exactly like you just said. We want to do it just like the lawnmowers. We want to make it efficient for folks. We have been able to, and I'm glad we resolved your issue, but that is also a good reminder. We have been able to, if folks don't get the purifier, and we know that we asked it's called a distributor, but essentially the people who send it out, if we know we place that order, we at the district have made sure that they are accountable and they resend it. But to your point, we recognize that and want to do in-person events for folks that maybe don't have that reliable source. So we have been able to replace it if folks can't get it, but I do appreciate that feedback. And definitely one of the things we want to do over the next couple of months is work with you all or whoever wants to help us work on that in-person event and what it looks like. So that's really great feedback as well. Linda, please.
I just wanted to echo everything that both Michelle and Anna said. Thank you, Michelle, for looking into that. I hadn't thought about it with the air filter, but I think it's very important that we do have something that is accessible and cost effective, because those can get really expensive. And yes, I agree with having them maybe at our local hardware stores. That would be great if that's a possibility. And then also with what Anna was saying, yeah, we've had an uptick, I feel like, in where people steal packages. So if we could have an in-person event, I think that would be very nice too. So just wanted to echo both what they both said. I think that would be very important for our community. Thank you.
Great. This is all such great feedback. We're taking definitely diligent notes. And that's exactly what this presentation is about. If there are other questions on residential air filtration and you think of it later, you can always put it in the chat or also reach out to us. We would love to hear this feedback. Like I said, this is not the only time, but we definitely wanted to let you know that we're moving forward. Like I said, the big hurdles have been overcome, and we're really grateful for the progress and the support you've all given us. All right, I'm going to give another update, and then from here on out, it's going to be sort of a larger sort of overview. So, but I have one more sort of detailed update, at least on the progress for the projects we've identified. So if you all recall, there was support for a paving project in the La Colonia area, as well as a paving project along Highway 43 in the North Shafter area. We talked about it pretty detailed at length last summer and last fall, and they're definitely kind of a little different than the project that I just shared. It's taken a little bit longer to overcome some of the other hurdles and kind of agency approvals we need. So we did get district governing board approval in August, right after you all gave us sort of support to move forward. As of right now, we are awaiting, and we hope to get final approval from CARB pretty soon. There's just some detailed back and forth we're still working with them on. And that, again, is those project plans that we keep talking about. There needs to be approval because the money is state money. There has to be approval from CARB to spend it. And so there's just details that we're working on, but at the same time, we're still working with the city and the county. So we definitely will continue to move forward. And within the time period that we were giving ourselves, which is 2 years, we hope that both of those projects are complete. We anticipate that CARB approval, like I said, to be soon, which will then allow us to really quickly implement both of those projects. So again, those are, and I can drop in the chat the old presentation right after in a second here that goes into more details. If you recall, the paving, it would include paving, sidewalk, and bike path along 43, as well as kind of the curb, gutter, sidewalk paving areas of the La Colonia area in Kern County. I do see Linda's hand, and I have a quick little update as well, but I'll take pause really quickly here.
Just wanted to say thank you for the update. This one has been really important to me. I just was also curious, are we going to have input on, say, like the bike paths? I've been talking to some folks that have given me feedback on the bike paths, and I'm assuming I don't know how that works because it's Caltrans on the 43 part, right?
The 43 part includes bike paths. So input, you mean on like the actual?
Yeah, just for safety wise to have like some type of barrier.
Right.
I don't know, maybe I'm way too far ahead of myself with this, but I've talked to some folks, just even existing bike paths, how I can take pictures of it. They were saying that it's not safe. There's too much like the road kind of crumbles and it's not safe on the where there is a current bike lane, like the road gives in or it's crumbling. I'm not really sure. But anyways, I can go take pictures, but safety was a big concern, just to have some protection. I know on the west side of the road, we're going to have that park at Fresno. So that would be north of this area. So we just wanted to make sure that, you know, people would be protected as they were going from town to the park or using that area. So I just wanted to make sure we would have some input on that.
I don't know about, and maybe I don't know if this, maybe we can kind of take that as input to give some feedback or get some feedback rather from Caltrans in the city specifically on that project, kind of where it's at design wise and next steps. I will say that to your broader question about bike paths, there is still funding. These kind of total close to 2.5 million, the two projects, and combined with paving and bike paths, we have about 3.5 million, meaning we have about 1 million left to support these types of programs. And so we are, this is a little ahead of ourselves, but we are hoping to do, and we'd love it. I know we've reached out to some folks and kind of announced this, an in-person meeting in May. And sometimes we find that getting feedback on things like this really is better in person. And so I wonder, I have a little update for what we want to do at that meeting, but I wonder if this type of feedback can be included. And by then, maybe the city and county can work with us on soliciting that feedback.
So before that meeting, do you want me to try and get pictures? I have a group of bikers that road bike folks and folks with kids that have input. So what's the best way? Is it type it up, bring pictures? You tell me. I don't know.
I think that's up to you. I do see that we have Caltrans and the city on here. So I don't know if they're interested in that sort of information, but you know, I think the more information, the better. So whatever makes sense to you. I do see that Lorena from Caltrans said that we can get a map and design of the area and kind of get some review and recommendations going from Caltrans.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Lorena. And thank you, Linda. I do see Gustavo's hand.
Yeah, just some comments about the bike lines. Yeah, and I'm not totally savvy on this, but I think they experts said that I think bike ones, bike threes, bike fours, I believe they rated this way, different kind of how they do things. But I've seen here, like in my neighborhood, they came and added bike lines, but only just a line. They didn't really made any changes on the street, just one line saying this is a bike line, but just one white line between the cars and the bike lane. And I think to the comments made, you know, and I've seen others, you know, that have at least two lines between the cars and the bikes, which create a little bit of buffer, you know, to make it safer for you know, people that is using the bikes. I think you know, it was mentioned what kind of protection for bikers, you know. I don't know if something physical, but if not, at least, you know, creating that buffer, you know, a couple of lines to create some buffer between the drivers and the bikes to make it a little bit safer. So that was my only comment. But, you know, if planning to do bike lanes, I think safety is very important.
Noted. Definitely. Thank you, Gustavo. And like I said, we're taking notes, and we have definitely lots of good stakeholders in the room to hear them. And so kind of as I finish this presentation, I was going to propose some discussion topics for the next few meetings. And so it sounds like this could be a really good one that we could get some feedback from other agency partners. So thank you. All right, so the next few slides are really going to be high-level updates. I'll just pause at each slide for any questions. I'm not going to read them completely out loud unless you want me to, but I might just sort of pause, I'll highlight a couple of the highlights. Again, this is all information that we provide to you when we send out the SERP tracker. So it's not necessarily any new information that you haven't seen or haven't been able to see month to month, but it's just a little bit of a more directed discussion. So I'll go ahead and go to the next slide and talk about pre-approved guidelines. So if you recall, we talked about how project plans are broken up, or all the incentives projects are broken up into sort of 4 categories if you think about it. One was pre-approved, so it was in the CAP guidelines already. And you all know this because we moved forward with these projects very quickly, and we were able to fund a lot of these projects very quickly. And so most of these are like heavy duty projects, so like school buses and rail car movers, or agricultural projects like replacing ag pumps for irrigation or tractors. So a lot of this hasn't changed dramatically recently, but I did just want to highlight a couple of things. One is that the rail car movers and switchers used to have about a little over 4 million in it, but you all have asked us to help shift to vegetative barriers as well as the residential air filtration measure. So that's why it's reflected in a different number, and there's more details in the SERP tracker. So that's still here. If we do still find a partner, we'll be able to continue forward with that project, but you were all really helpful in helping us redirect some of the funding as we come up on funding deadlines. The other thing I want to highlight is we have been working really closely, and we definitely at the next meeting can provide an update on how we think we can move forward with getting more partners interested in heavy duty truck replacement. As you all know, because we've talked about it a lot, and it definitely, we can see some of the pinch points with outreach, is that we need folks to volunteer. We can't make folks take the funding that we have, even though we have lots of great funding. And so the way we've been able to do it with other projects is to change like the guidelines or the amount of funding that we give to make folks more interested. And so as we move forward, we might need to think about some of these if we want. These are really where we get a lot of our emissions reductions, right? Because these are big projects that, have a lot of diesel fuel, for example. So just kind of food for thought, but I just wanted to give everyone a comprehensive update here and see if there's any questions before I move on to some of the more community identified projects. Okay, I don't see any, but again, as always, I will happily go back if something occurs to you. And we'll definitely, I'm going to pause on these highlighted ones, but I'll just let you know, this is the second layer, and these are projects that require CARB approval, and we have gotten CARB approval, and we are ready to fund. So a lot of these have already completely been funded. The first is the low dust harvesters, and the second is alternatives to agricultural burning. Both of these get us a lot of reductions in the community, which of course is the main goal, right, is to reduce emissions and reduce exposure. These have been funded completely for a while, so this isn't really a new number. Residential lawn and garden, those are the lawnmowers that we have given away. We're still open for funding. We don't really have a lot of funding to do like a completely new event. And so we have asked in the past, we're putting it on pause for now, but we have asked you all, if you're later interested in shifting funding to this measure, we'd happily do another event. We have about enough funding, oopsies. We have about enough funding for like maybe 20 some, maybe a few more than that, lawnmowers. Typically, when we do these events, we like to do about 150 to 200. So just kind of food for thought there. And again, if you have questions or input, I wanted to highlight 2 things on this slide though. The first is commercial lawn and garden. So as a reminder, this measure is to replace like big, like riding lawnmowers or equipment that commercial lawn and garden providers, so maybe folks that own a business, or maybe folks that work at like a school district, or even like a municipality, like a city, and they take care of the parks, that have big equipment that is definitely more polluting than like a smaller lawnmower. We are definitely seeking partners. We've done some pretty direct outreach And I think a few of you have in the past given us some contacts that I know we've reached out to. If you have, and we actually have one of our incentives supervisors on the call right now who runs this program. If you have any leads or any questions right now or that occur to you throughout this presentation, specifically about this measure, we are definitely interested. We have the funding and the CERP for it. And we definitely want to make sure we replace those pieces of equipment with the cleanest available technologies.
Jessica, I
Yes.
just wanted to elevate Bianca's question in the chat. Are those nut harvesters working in the Shafter community? I think she's referring to the commercial lawn and
Low
garden
dust
item.
harvesters. I'm assuming low dust harvesters is what you're asking, Bianca, the nut harvesters. So yes, so those are, first of all, two ways to answer that question. First of all, everything on this list is in the Shafter community. I don't know, I can get back to you. So basically when we spend the funding, it's, as you all know, probably from everything in your life since COVID happened, and especially with really big pieces of equipment, it can take a year to 18 months for really big pieces of equipment to come in. So I don't know exactly if all like 100% of them have been delivered. So let me check on that, Bianca, and we will get back to you. If we can note that as an action item, Harder team, and we'll get back to the CSC on that.
Bianca also said in the chat, can we move some funding for lawnmower for companies to resident?
I think we can move funding from measures that aren't moving forward to any of the measures we think we can support. I would encourage us to continue to look out. You'll kind of see throughout the presentation, maybe other items that aren't moving forward, or even earlier, I shared some of the concerns we had. Mostly because I think the commercial lawn and garden ones, I think are just a little bit bigger and more polluting, but it really is, you know, community input here. So maybe we can note that as something to keep in mind as we move forward. If that makes sense, Bianca.
Thank you, Bianca, for your question, and thank you, Jessica.
Thank you. And I see Bianca's point. Yes, you know, we definitely want to look to support moving funding. I think all I'm saying, Bianca, and I'll just move back, is we have a lot. There's not very much funding in the commercial lawn and garden, and it's definitely a measure that was very much supported by the community. Whereas we have a lot of funding in some of these other ones that aren't moving as fast, and way more funding in them that are also go to businesses that maybe we can shift to support residents. Was just my thought. If that makes sense, Bianca. Sometimes these are like a little bit larger businesses usually, whereas this would be commercial lawn and garden. Sometimes are, you know, much smaller depending, much more localized business often.
Wanted to elevate another comment in the chat so we could have another event that could help the community from Bianca.
Yes, we definitely want to do that. So maybe I'll just note that we can consider at a future meeting shifting funding from a measure that isn't moving to residential lawn and garden to support hosting another event. And yes, that'd be something we definitely would look forward to. Great question from Angie, because that is my next point, is the EV charging infrastructure. We talked about this at the last meeting. If you recall, we had our partners from CCAC, Gustavo and Janet came to talk a little bit about the funding that they received from the state, or that they can help distribute from the state to support these types of charging infrastructure. This would be for residential vehicles. They have everything within this EV charging infrastructure would need to be publicly accessible. So this would be, it could be located at like a public area that's maybe owned by the city, or it can be located at a business, but it needs to be accessible to residents and to public. So it's not to install at residents' homes. This would be like fast charging to install in a publicly located place. Does that answer your question, Angie?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So what I was going to say here is last meeting, and we didn't hear any comments sort of to oppose this. we wanted to make sure, as you can see, we haven't spent much of the funding. And one of the barriers that we proposed last time in talking with CCAC was to make sure that we could fund more of the charger. So meaning instead of funding like a lower amount, we would add more funding to each charger. We wouldn't change the overall funding, but it just means that we would be able to support so that anyone who installed the charger could take advantage of the funding from CCAC and the funding from the district. And so the reason I highlight this here is we'd really like to have support, not at this meeting because we didn't kind of like let you know about it, but at the next meeting, we'd like to kind of get final CSC support to do that, because what we would do is we would then work with our board and work with CCAC to partner in that effort. That way, as they move forward with more of their funding, we can get more chargers in Shafter. So I just wanted to highlight that for you as an upcoming action that we'd also like to take. Any questions on the rest of the stuff that's listed here? I didn't go over everything in detail. Go ahead, Linda.
On these the EV charging, who can apply for that? Is like a home person, or can like a business or a school or
a business or a school or like a city or a county? It just needs to be accessible by the public. So it wouldn't be like on a private piece, like someone's house. It would need to be, and really we're looking, of course, we could do certain different types of chargers, but the goal in talking with CCAC at our last meeting, if you recall, would be to do those fast chargers. So the infrastructure, meaning like the electrical capabilities, would really need to be there as well.
So, but what if they're not there? Is there something like, can PG&E help out? I mean, because that's the concern, since some of the buildings are older.
Right, yes. And we would make sure to provide kind of that support to make sure we connected folks with PG&E or others to help support that effort. And definitely one of the things we look to do as well is there is still funding for something called level 2, which isn't as intense, like the need isn't as much as maybe a level 3 would be.
Okay.
Meaning it charges like your car, certain cars, in maybe a few hours rather than, 30 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. And while I'm here, Zong, can you put in the chat if you haven't already, you probably did, or someone the presentation from last month from CCAC that Gustavo gave. That way folks can kind of be reminded of what was talked about last month. Thank you. All right, I have 2 more slides. This slide is for those project plans. When we submit them to CARB, there's a lot of back and forth with CARB. And so sometimes we get feedback and then we have to resubmit to CARB, or CARB just has a lot of questions, or there's a lot kind of going on for that particular measure. And so that's where we're at with some of these. We've had a lot of back and forth with CARB, and we're definitely looking forward to moving these along. Some of these I've already talked with you about. One of them, the one on the very bottom, we just submitted to CARB. We have had feedback from you all on this measure, but this is one of the measures I was going to propose that we talk about in May in person and talk about passenger vehicle replacement. So as a reminder, in your SERP is a measure to fund up to $20,000 for residents to get into clean vehicles. And so we just wanted to bring this to your attention because it's been a while since we've talked about it. We really do want to get kind of further along and talk kind of about how to do outreach on this measure, what feedback we need to kind of move forward. But we also just wanted to let you know that CARB approval is pending. And so we are really looking forward to, hopefully in the next few months, be able to start moving forward with these types of projects. So we're really excited about it. We're really excited to continue to work with you all on it and talk about it a little bit more. And I think maybe it would go really well with a discussion about vehicle charging and EV charging. So we were thinking the in-person meeting in May would be a great time to talk about this, along with the bike path discussion that Linda just brought up a few moments ago.
Linda, do you have a question?
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay if I talk?
Please, yeah.
Okay. So I just had a question because I've heard this come up before. You had just mentioned it could be almost $20,000. And I know there was an issue before with, people having to upfront the money. How will that work? Because that's a lot of money to upfront when buying.
That is a great question. I don't know if Nia or even Jamie know that more than I do, if that's an upfront cost or if that is like, so is it like a rebate or is it like, do folks have to come up with that money, Nia?
So the way the current program runs is it's actually provided at the point of sale. So if you were eligible for the current program provides $9,500, the $9,500 check would go to the retailer. So you would only pay or finance the difference.
Awesome.
And just to piggyback on that, it's not uncommon for the balance then to be financed. So let's say there's an additional $5,000. You could still finance that over, several years so that you'd end up having a $30 car payment, which is still a lot, but it's a lot better. And a lot of folks can make that work.
Correct. That's how the program commonly works right now. Thanks, Jamie.
And the way that it's written, just to support what Nia and Jamie just said, thank you both so much, is to mirror that same, I knew it was to mirror our same program. So now that we know that that's how our program works, that is exactly what would happen here. That's the goal, so that folks won't have to pay the $20,000 upfront. And I think that's Gustavo's hand.
Yes, I think my comments align with what was said. I was thinking, I don't even know how it works. I think it was a little bit explained, the rebate for clean cars. But I was thinking, is it possible for you to develop a flyer with all the information needed to how it works, how much, and how to, claim that discount? I think a flyer with all the information needed would be great, and even for us, the nonprofits to help, disseminate the information, because I will not speak for others, but I've been engaged here, and I don't know how it works.
That is such a good point. And one of the things, the answer is always yes. I see Jamie unmuted as well. I'll just kind of put ahead of that, because we just submitted this to CARB, we're not quite ready to advertise for it yet. And that would be our goal at that May meeting, is to get that feedback. And I just noted that that's something we want to do because it's a new program, right? Go ahead, Jamie.
I was going to say that we are at one of these meetings coming up, going to come back with, we put a little draft kind of outreach plan together for Shafter, and it actually kind of breaks up some of the key incentive programs where we need a little more oomph behind it. Jess is absolutely right that because this one's not actually open, and I will tell you, even so, the regular grant is for a lesser amount, but even the regular grant, we've got a huge backlog right now. So I don't really want to be pushing folks to the grant quite yet until we have it up and running for this community. So once that comes, and actually probably before that is open, we're going to come back and just talk about outreach in general and just do some basic querying of you all, and then maybe having you ask them questions of others about how folks get their information in Shafter.
And I do, thank you, Jamie. I do see Bianca's point. I do think as we get closer, I think doing it ahead of time makes sense, as long as we know what the date is. We have learned our lesson. If we announce something and then, because we don't have control over how fast it gets approved, if we announce something and then it's like months and months, we don't want to cause frustration or confusion from folks, because there is an existing separate program. So we'll just make sure we coordinate closely with you all before we announce it, or before, as we develop that outreach material that Jamie just described and Gustavo suggested. Awesome. Well, a couple of other things that are on this list we just went into detail about. But again, I'm happy to take any questions. I do have one more slide. I know we're short on time. I'm happy to get all this feedback. This is fabulous. So I don't know if there's anything else on this slide before I have one final quick slide to share. Awesome. Okay, my final slide are a couple that they're kind of in an interesting place. So these are the three, as you noticed, this list has gotten shorter. This list used to be very long, and we have moved them all either to pending or approved. We have three that are moving, but just kind of in different directions. So the first is the pesticide monitoring and notification. We all know kind of where we've landed with the Department of Pesticide Regulation moving forward on a lot of things so far. We have invited several of you, or all of you, to a couple of different subcommittee meetings we've had in conjunction with Arvin Lamont to talk about notification. And there have been kind of monitoring programs completed in the past. One of the things I just wanted to note here is that it's been a while since we've had the pesticide discussion in Shafter. And because we had that subcommittee that folks were invited to, over the next few months, we can certainly work with DPR on having an update on an agenda here at an upcoming meeting, just to talk about overall programs, kind of a lot of the great work that they're doing on notification, and a few of the regulations for mitigation. So that's just an update there. The other is commercial underfired charbroilers. We are working, and we will be submitting that very shortly. In the meantime, even though we don't have an approved draft, we have been looking for partners really across the whole district to partner with us on this. As a reminder, this would be like funding the installation of like a filtration unit. So meaning like if you cook on your stove at home and there's a hood that helps take away the fumes or the smoke or the emissions, it'd be like a big sort of industrial commercial version of that that's just cleaner and helps reduce all of the smoke that would otherwise like go out the building and perhaps make like a neighborhood smell like the food that's being cooked in that area. And so it's been difficult to find partners that are interested and willing, because it is a really big cost. A lot of the times they have to like do a lot of construction. So we are definitely interested in working with you all on that, if that's of interest to you. And then finally, the solar power and energy storage, we've brought to you all a couple times, and we're happy to again. There are all these other existing programs that do provide free solar and energy storage, or solar power rather, to community groups. And we just haven't had this discussion with you all in a while. So I'm just noting it here as we can work and move it forward. We can talk with you about kind of what this allocation means, and maybe there's a shift to how we support it. This was meant to be a big match funding with some state programs. So knowing that there are other programs out there, we just wanted to note that this is still here. We can talk about it at a future meeting and kind of move that forward. But really what I wanted to do, and just kind of pause for a second before we move forward, I know there's a big interest in talking about vegetative barriers, which is our next presentation. I just wanted to acknowledge the work that it's taken to make this list only 3. And it's really a lot of the hard work and input you've all given us on the other sort of 40-ish, 30-something measures that we just talked about. So I just want to thank you all. We took lots of great notes tonight on the high priority measures. And maybe I'll just stop sharing my screen really briefly. And just let you know if there's any question on anything that's besides vegetative barriers, which we're about to talk about, you can let me know. And maybe I'm off on the time here, Vanessa. I don't know if we have much time or if we're way over time.
We've got a couple more minutes before we start the next agenda item.
Awesome. So I'll just happily take any other questions from folks, even in the chat as we move forward to the next item, or here verbally.
I want to also encourage our public members at this time, if you have any questions about what we've discussed thus far, now would be the time to ask before we transition.
Also, we'd like to make sure that any of the folks that ask questions during this presentation were able to get their questions fully answered. Make sure that we have any residual questions that we should go ahead and answer from those folks. I think I recall Ana, Bianca, Gustavo, Michelle, Linda, we want to make sure that all of your answers are, all of your questions are answered. So if that is not the case, please let us know.
I do see one in the chat I have yet to answer, and then I see Linda's hand. Advertising is coming from the AB617 funds we get for outreach and implementation would be how we would do that advertising. One of the other things we can do, and we've talked about it in the past, is we actually can give mini grants out to those community groups that Gustavo just talked about to help us with advertising. So we can actually a couple $1,000s can provide you with the materials, and you let us know kind of the work that you did. If you have more questions about that, Jamie has way more information than I do. But as we think about that, this is more about, you know, the district doing the outreach we know how to do, and also the community groups doing the outreach that we know you do best, and supporting your efforts. Go ahead, Linda.
Sorry, just before, since we had all those incentives up, I had someone reach out to me, and I just wanted to ask before I forgot this. They did a fireplace insert, and they've been having a hard time getting a reimbursement. Saying he told me that he didn't provide the right type of proof, which I don't know how the fireplace insertion works. I would have thought with like a picture that it was inserted. Who can I send him to?
You can actually send it to me, Linda.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd be happy.
How?
I'll put my information in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Sorry, I just didn't want to forget.
No, that's great.
Problem.
I'd also like to bring up a comment from Michelle. She says, I'm interested in helping with whatever is needed for the air filtration program. So just wanted to make sure that the Air District took note of that. And also would encourage any folks who are interested in helping out with that air filtration program or workshop to please contact the Air District. I believe the Air District posted the email address in the chat for those of you who are interested.
Thank you.
Any other final questions or comments, folks, before we move on to the next action item or the next agenda item?
Not seeing any questions, Vanessa, on YouTube either. So we're going to go ahead and transition to the long-awaited, I feel like I need a drum roll, vegetative barriers conversation. So during this agenda item, we're going to spend some time reviewing what the CSC members have suggested in terms of locations for vegetative barriers. We also want to encourage the public to submit any questions that you have regarding how to use the vegetative barriers, and we're going to walk through a map activity. So if you have any questions during this time, please do pause. We want to make sure that everyone's on board and really clear about how we're moving forward with this item so that you can be completely engaged. We understand that identifying places most in need of vegetative barriers can sometimes be confusing, especially because of how the maps are laid out. So we want to make sure that we orient you to the design of the maps and orient you to how the Air District will be presenting the maps. So make sure you ask those clarification questions. And then as soon as you understand the maps, we also want to move to providing your ideas of where these barriers should be located. Want to make sure that you understand that the goal for this discussion is to really summarize what the Air District is seeing so far as the desired locations for these vegetative barriers. Also want to reiterate that during this agenda item, we're not going to be making a decision or voting on anything tonight. Instead, we're really making space to collect all your information and all of your input so that the map truly represents where the community wants to see these vegetative barriers take place. We know that along the line you all have, or along the way you all have provided feedback and provided some recommendations. So this really serves as a moment to pause and reflect and ensure that all of your input has been captured before we move to any decisions and actions. With that said, Jessica is going to walk us through this activity. I'm going to pass it right back to you. You should be able to share your screen. and help us move forward.
Thank you, Dr. Ramos. Thank you, everyone, again, for all of the engagement that Dr. Ramos just mentioned. I'm actually going to kind of go a little bit out of order from the slides because I think it's important to set the stage a little bit. So I will come back to the couple of these slides and just talk about where we're at with the vegetative barriers program first. And talk a little bit about what the next steps are. And then because this is really integrated into all of that. And so I want folks to know where we're at first. So the vegetative barriers project, we all shifted funding based on CSC feedback to support this with $1 million. We are looking to make sure that as we have people who apply to this program, meaning this is again an incentives program where we pay someone to install the barriers using the funding from the SERP, that we know that when folks apply, we can guide them to where the CSC is interested in having these barriers the most. So the final barrier locations will be determined in conjunction with the CSC input and the entity who we select through that process. So we do have a subcommittee or we have been talking about this and we've had some meetings, some informational meetings with folks. As we move forward, we're happy to continue this discussion either in a subcommittee or at this meeting, but we definitely wanted to let you know what the next steps would be. Just as an FYI, as we're talking about this, the deadline has already passed. We have extended it. So if that was your question, like, why are we talking about this? It's already passed. We extended it to let folks know that there is more time. There's a month longer to apply. And we definitely will have an informational meeting and to review and finally select the proposals will take a month and a half. So it's about 90 days that we work with that. So there is a process and a timeline here, but we know based on feedback from the last meeting, that's very important. We know where we want the barriers that folks feel like they're being heard. So now I'm going to go back to the beginning because we did have a mapping exercise Dr. Ramos was just talking about. I'm going to open it up here in just a minute. We definitely can continue to take feedback. So I'm going to really quickly explain kind of how we can get feedback. I will open the map in a second and orient you to it and let you know that this will also continue to be an open tool. We will not close this. We will continue to take feedback from you all. What we've done already, though, I did want to highlight really quickly. So far, it has been a little bit, but this was all the feedback we got many, many meetings ago from you all. And in some cases, after the meeting, you submitted this separately. And these are sort of the high level priority areas or the top 3 suggested areas that we heard from you way back when. And it's totally possible that things have changed. But one, and these are not in order, these are just the 3 areas kind of separately. One of the areas was along Manuel Avenue. Another area was in the La Colonia area. And the third area was on Orange Street and Poplar Avenue. So I'm just letting you know that we have already seen some trends to where folks are very interested in having vegetative barriers placed. So far, we have not had any official applicants. I did see that question just pop up. So that is another reason to extend it. We have been talking with folks that are interested, but I think just needed some more information and some more time. And we can certainly set up a subcommittee to talk further about this. So I do think I've answered the questions I've seen so far. So with that, I'm going to open, if it's okay with folks, if there's no more questions, I'm gonna actually open the map just to kind of share what the actual map looks like, because maybe you weren't on the committee or you weren't at those couple of meetings. When you click on that link, and maybe we can drop the link back in this chat, maybe it's already been done. When you click on this link, you can see there's a couple of things I just wanted to let you know. One is that you can zoom in and see when you click here, the suggested locations that we've already seen. You can also see, as you zoom in, some of the comments that folks have provided. So it's not just dropping a location on a map, but they've had maybe some more information that they added. So maybe like a cross street or maybe some other discussion of why they want a barrier there. Maybe for some folks, they wanted a barrier because there was dust or they felt like they wanted it along the road. So that's one of the things I wanted to let you know. The other thing I wanted to show you is how you can drag and drop a location and add the comment and a little bit of information. And that's an easy way to share that you want something in a specific spot. So I'll just show you, for example, if I feel like right along 43 at Central, I was interested in making sure there was a barrier along here, I can drag and drop and say 43 at Central. And I am Jessica Olson. This is my email. I can say remember because I'm going to make several comments. Maybe I have a picture. This is actually related to Linda's comment earlier. If you have a picture and you're able to, you can attach something here that shows like, hey, look, there's really a great spot to plant a tree, or I've seen some dust here and this is why. You add your comment here and you're able to track it. You'll get an email from the program that you've put your comment here, and then you can kind of track and see your comments here. Folks are also able to support your comment. So maybe the more support a comment gets, we can also at the district be able to track that maybe that particular area was of interest. One of the things that I'm going to maybe stop sharing for a second and see if Zong can share, because one of the things we also have on here, but I'm not seeing it, but it could be because I'm logged in, is that this also is bilingual and you are able to translate the entire map. But I'm not seeing it right here. So I might have to go back and make that adjustment really quickly. So maybe I'll pause here, see if there's just any questions. And in the meantime, Zong, can you pull it up and take any comments that you see while I make that adjustment?
Sure.
Thank you. And I do see Ana Valle's hand.
Go ahead, Ana. You're on mute.
Ok, disculpen. La persona que está encargada de las barreras vegetativas acá en Shafter, ¿no podría como juntarnos con las personas y llevarlas para que miren en persona realmente a dónde necesitamos las barreras vegetativas y no dirigirnos tanto por el mapa? Porque a veces es mejor mirarlo en persona e ir, caminar los lugares para que la persona realmente se dé la idea. Y estoy de acuerdo con las barreras vegetativas, pero también yo pienso que tendríamos que los rancheros o los dueños de cada field poner parte de su dinero y no darles dinero y dinero y dinero. Entonces, porque si se les da financiamiento para poner las barreras vegetativas, después van a querer dinero para también mantenimiento. O sea que a los negocios no hay que darles todo el dinero y todo a los negocios. Y no soy muy buena para usar la tecnología y me voy a salir un poquito para atrás porque no me salí de la pantalla y no pude hacer el comentario atrás, pero alguien dijo que lo podíamos hacer. Con referente a lo que comentaron de mover dinero, yo pienso que nosotros no vamos a estar dispuestos a los del comité a mover dinero si no se mira que hayan o barreras vegetativas que ya estén puestas, o que haya el programa de aire, de purificadores de aire, o sea que se mire que Shafter está realmente recibiendo algo y no solo lo tengamos en propuestas y lo estemos extendiendo, porque así este año también se va a ir sin que Shafter aún no tenga nada. Cuando vengamos estemos moviendo y moviendo el dinero de un lugar a otro. Y aquí el pueblo no era el dinero, era para Shafter y no tenemos nada. O sea que, como dicen que extendieron para las barreras vegetativas, Eso no se, aunque se extienda, si necesita extenderse más, se debe de extender hasta que las barreras vegetativas estén puestas, o obligar a los rancheros que no sea una opción, sino que es una necesidad para nosotros aquí en el pueblo. Ya no es una opción para el ranchero, sino que tendría que ser una obligación para protegernos, porque ¿de qué nos sirven los purificadores si ellos no ponen barreras vegetativas? Y no estamos contaminados realmente en el tiempo que ellos cortan toda la cosecha, y realmente si es diferente donde están las barreras vegetativas, el polvo no pasa para este lado, detiene. O sea que eso es de primera necesidad, según como lo veo yo, para nuestro pueblo. Gracias.
Thank you. And I'll just make one comment. I do see other questions is with this being a voluntary incentives program, the best we can do to ask folks to be a part of it is to really work with you all. I think you made a great point, Anna, is that we need to work to share with folks the need. And so if that means taking folks on a walking tour, I think that could be really useful. I know in the past, we've had lots of great photos from you all submitted when we first talked about this as a project. We still have all that, and we're happy to use all of that to our advantage. And so that's what we're doing now. And I agree, we will definitely keep making sure that as long as we know that there's people that will apply, we will keep extending the deadline for applications. But at some point, we also need to work together and figure out how to best make sure people use this, because there is a deadline overall, and that's pretty much 2 years away for spending the funding, because the SERP is 5 years long. And if you'll believe it, it has been almost exactly 3 years since we adopted this at the CARB level. But you totally make a lot of sense, and I really appreciate your comments, so thank you. And I see Michelle and then Annabelle.
Well, we talked about this at the agenda meeting on these items that, oops, sorry, my dog.
Oh, Michelle, you're cutting off.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. If you go to the one at West Tulare and right there in front of the chapter high, if you tap on that tree there in Mantle Park, that to me, okay, so no, the one over to the north, that one there, if you click on that, it reads all the way Mantle Avenue to Burbank and San Diego between that's downtown Shafter. I mean, that's right by the high school. There's a park right there. I think the pin was dropped in the wrong spot. Because, well, even though it says Mantle Avenue, which is Mantle Avenue, but Burbank is south like 3 miles. And so that vegetarian barrier, I think some of these trees got dropped by accident, and we probably, if we could go through them, maybe that's a subcommittee. They're confusing because you look at them like there's stuff downtown Shafter. I don't see that need there if we're trying to protect the barriers to keep the dust and everything out. Downtown Shafter is all paved.
I think maybe what we can do, that's a good point, is making sure that everything we have makes sense. I will also acknowledge, so one of the other benefits to vegetative barriers is to block pollution from traffic. It is not just about preventing dust, but perhaps preventing what we call black carbon or soot from diesel traffic. So oftentimes you may notice, for example, that there's barriers on freeways or highways that Caltrans plants. That is mostly to block pollution from the cars. And so, but I'll acknowledge one of the things we can do, because we took notes on who commented, is to make sure, and I do see Dora's hand. Thank you, Dora. I was gonna say, I didn't want to put her on the spot, but if Dora can help clarify maybe this comment, if that's okay, Annabelle and Gustavo, since it was directly about Dora's comment, if she can quickly clarify.
Yeah, the Mantle Avenue that we're referring to starts out here in La Colonia, starts at Burbank and runs down to San Diego. So it's that stretch of Mantle Avenue. There are between town and La Colonia, there are orchards that cut the running of the Manuel Avenue from town. So Manuel Avenue is, in this case, is referring to the one running west of La Colonia.
Right here?
I don't know.
Maybe if yeah.
It's at Burbank and Mantle. That's where it
Gotcha. I have that right
starts.
here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
really to sounds like to the point that Michelle just brought up, this is going to be something we'll relocate, which definitely supports, like I showed earlier in the slides, one of the main places that we heard was this area. So if anything, we're just kind of moving one from here to here, which still seems like a really popular area we've heard from folks. So thank you, Dora, for clarifying. Oh, I did see, did Annabelle, did you still have your hand raised? I can't tell.
Looks like she lowered it, but
okay. I see Gustavo's hand. Folks can continue to raise hands, so we'd be happy.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think, I don't know if the map is also capturing I think the greening spaces, which is trees, anywhere, but
yes.
just, and that may be, I don't know if that's the case, but yeah, I think before moving forward, definitely, ensuring that, the locations are for the residents to really see the need is. I believe we submitted some pictures and streets and cross streets. I don't know if those are captured there, but if in case you don't have it, we can send it later out again for some of the neighborhoods that their neighbors are orchards also. And I was also thinking, and I don't think we captured this or we mentioned this before, but I don't know if Felipa is participating today in the meeting, but she's just one example that normally her comments are that she's in the back of her yard. Yes, there are orchards and they apply pesticides. And I think maybe we need to also consider, those neighborhoods, those homes that the backyard is an orchard. I think we need to also pay attention to that because, those are not seen from the street, but are affecting the neighborhoods, the families. I think that's an area that we can maybe explore a little bit more to see, how much we can do there. So that's in terms of locations. It looks like we still need to do some more homework there. And my other comment is, I think Wonderful, the company Wonderful and the city of Shaft, I believe they expressed they were interested in applying to have, this vegetarian barriers project to apply for it. Did you hear from them or do we outreach to them? What may be the...
Yes. Yes, and it sounds like they're very interested. One of the questions that came up, and I will just acknowledge this is something we're working on and definitely one of the reasons we extended it. And folks can, and I do see Jed's hand, so maybe Jed can speak to this better than I can, but I'll just acknowledge that at least from my understanding, one of the questions, and you have all brought this up as well, is about the use of oleanders. And from my understanding, actually the way that the funding works, because oleanders are technically a poisonous plant, we, as of right now, based on the guidelines, I don't believe can fund poisonous plants, even though they're typically, as you all have acknowledged, used for barrier protection. We're definitely going to work to see what we can do. But I do see, if it's okay, Bianca, that Jed from Wonderful Company has his hand raised and maybe can answer more directly.
Yeah, just a follow-up comment. In Arvin, because the Arvin Lamont, there is also the same project, and the residents sent me some pictures with different kind of trees, and I will share those with you, Jessica, for you to see it. But that's what the residents from Arvin are looking at. What other than oleanders, what else, you know? And looks like there are some examples near Arvin, you know, for consideration. So we'll share those the coming couple of days with you, so you can. And I don't know the name of the trees, but after I send them to you, you may be able to identify them.
Maybe, but I appreciate that. I will say we do have a list. We are very aware of what trees are available and what trees are, you know, based on sort of common practices, able to be funded. So I'll just acknowledge that. I will go to Jed though, if that's okay, to answer for Wonderful Company, since that was the question.
Yeah, sure. I'll make it quick. Thank you. I just, yes, Gustavo, you're right. I mean, we've been talking to you and Annabelle and many others in the community for a while about, you know, what we can do on our ranches, which are on Lerdo. And so we are interested in applying. We've been talking to the Air District, and I don't know if David Lopez is on, but he's been very helpful in trying to help us navigate, you know, what it takes. And the oleanders piece of it is one issue because we have some pretty good confidence that oleanders work. We don't really have expertise, or at least I don't personally know what else could. So that is one of the open questions, but yeah, we are interested and we're looking into it.
Thank you, Jed, for helping answer that. Like I said, and David couldn't make it tonight. He is feeling under the weather, but like I said, we're committed to also seeing what we can make work, knowing that we have an interested partner and it's someone you have all been interested in working with. So we're grateful for that. And I'll pass it to Amy I don't know whose hand was raised first.
Well, I think Bianca and Annabelle are back to raising their hands. And Bianca, you also had comments in the chat. So I don't know if you want to bring up both points and then we'll go to Annabelle. Go ahead, Bianca.
If you want to take Annabelle's comment, I'll go next after.
Annabelle.
Sí, buenas tardes. Con respecto a las plantas que quieren poner como barreras, es verdad que el laurel es muy bueno. No necesita tanta agua ni tampoco necesita tanto trabajo. Son bonches que en realidad no necesitan mucho mantenimiento y son baratos. Aparte, hay 3 colores, rojo, blanco y rosita. Entonces, no tan solo van a cubrir, sino que también van a dar vida a las calles. O sea, se van a ver bien. Y no tienen tanta ciencia, ni mirar tantos químicos, ni nada. Está donde quiera. Está en los freeways, lo tienen en todas partes. Si lo tienen en los freeways, quiere decir que está aprobado. No tienen que gastar en andar buscando aprobación ni nada. Ahorita lo que queremos es que se haga ya, que se haga, porque ya viene otra vez el verano, ya viene otra vez la polvadera. Entonces, ¿qué estamos esperando? ¿Qué estamos esperando más? No nos hagan desesperarnos a nosotros, porque ustedes todo es industria, 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 como dijo Maribel, y no es justo. Nosotros no vamos a cambiar las industrias. Nosotros no vamos a comprarle toda la maquinaria a las compañías ricas, porque son ricas, millonarias, y nosotros somos pobres comunidades, se podría decir. Y como todos estamos aquí opinando que ese dinero fue para la comunidad. No tenemos luz mercurial, no tenemos semáforos, no tenemos stops, los niños cruzan, no tenemos banqueta. Eso es lo que nosotros queremos. Y eso es lo que ustedes no entienden. No entienden. Contaminados ya estamos. Más contaminados no vamos a estar. Entonces ya déjense de estar que para que no contaminen, no. ¿Por qué el rico más rico? ¿Por qué se le da a ellos? Si ese dinero era para nosotros, para la comunidad, así se nos dijo. Así se nos dijo cuando nos dieron ese dinero. Y ustedes se van a locomotoras, se van a pompas de los rancheros. Está bien, la escuela necesita bases para nuestros estudiantes, que bueno, eso sí queda en comunidad. Pero ¿por qué? Si yo soy dueña de un troque o de un semáis, a mí me van a exigir que yo cambie mi semáis, porque yo trabajo con mi semáis, porque es mi propiedad. ¿Por qué los rancheros? Es su propiedad. Ellos contaminan, ellos tienen todo eso. ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué se les paga? ¿Para que nos contaminen más? ¿Para qué? No, señores, ya déjenos de estarnos poniendo los obstáculos. Es tan fácil, ustedes quieren. Para ellos, ustedes no nos dicen, les vamos a pedir que aprueben esto, ustedes no nos piden opinión para eso, para darles dinero a ellos. En cambio, cuando es algo para la comunidad, ustedes quieren donaciones, quieren que alguien los vea, que alguien lo apruebe, no. Nosotros le estamos dando opciones sencillas. Es más, si no le quieren cobrar a los rancheros, no les cobren. Pero utilicen más fondos. Los niños pasan para la escuela, a las escuelas, señores, y cruzan por donde están todos esos árboles, donde están echando todo ese veneno. Pasamos en la madrugada a trabajar, de aquí de Shafter al 99. Neblina, polvo. Es una boca de lobo para cruzar por ahí. No, esas plantas no necesitan trabajo, no necesitan agua. Las ponen ustedes ahí. Vean los freeways. Ustedes miran gente podándolas. Ustedes miran personas en carros echándoles agua. Claro, de vez en cuando. Entonces no busquen todo ese dinero que ustedes les van a pagar a otros para que lo administren. Mejor busquen dónde se puede dar ese dinero para la comunidad. Es tanto que ustedes no pueden soltar un 5 para la comunidad porque quieren que todos nos lo administren a nosotros. Yo ya tengo, desde cuándo estamos con esto, señores. Y ustedes lo único que han dado, un filtro de aire y una máquina de cortar zacate. Eso es todo lo que ustedes nos han dado a nosotros. O díganme que no es cierto. Alguien de ustedes que me conteste que no es cierto. En cambio, ya han dado millones, han dado mucho dinero. ¿Por qué? ¿Por qué? A ver, si nosotros no hubiéramos pedido, no se nos hubiera dado ese dinero, ustedes no le hubieran dado ni un 5 a ninguna industria. Nosotros no conocíamos rancheros, nosotros no conocíamos al HARP, nosotros no conocíamos nada de eso. Pero cuando se puso dinero aquí en la ciudad, todos ya conocimos a un montón de gente que nomás para mí, perdóneme mi palabra y no quiero ofender a nadie, pero es pura gente aprovechada. Pura gente aprovechada que tiene dinero y quiere más. Yo ya de plano digo, ¿para qué sigo hablando si es como tocar la campana de la iglesia y que nadie va a misa? Es hablar al aire. Hablar al aire, señores. Porque si ustedes vinieran a recorrer todos los files, alrededor de las casas, alrededor de las calles, ustedes miraran dónde está necesitándose las barreras verdes. Bájense poquito de su oficina y vengan a dar un recorrido. Y se van a dar cuenta de muchas cosas. Nosotros necesitamos pintura para peatones, porque los carros no se paran para que un peatón venga a misa. Señoras y señores de la tercera edad en bicicleta, no se paran para que ellos pasen. Vengan a ver todo eso. Luz no tenemos, hay partes donde está oscuro. Esas son nuestras necesidades. Agua limpia, aire limpio. Ustedes pueden ponerle filtros para que nos den un agua más potable, más buena, pero no. ¿Qué está pasando? Déjense de estar dando dinero para otras partes y júntense y digan, esta comunidad tiene estas prioridades. Vamos a solucionarlas. ¿Por qué más cosas para las industrias? Ellos tienen hasta su avión privado. ¿Cuánto no contamina un avión para ir a una junta o para venir, ir y venir? ¿Cuánto no contamina una avioneta? Díganme. ¿Cuánto no contaminan las avionetas para fumigar? Y a nosotros están diciendo que la chimenea contamina. Por favor, señores. Nosotros ya estamos, ya no tenemos eso, ese velo en los ojos. Ya no. Y discúlpenme, pero ya no quiero decir nada. Gracias por su atención.
Thank you so much, Anabel. I know that over the last few meetings, we've heard you bring up these types of shrubbery trees as a potential option, and I hear the frustration in your voice, and I hear what you are saying. And I think for today's conversation, it's not a matter of are there going to be vegetative barriers installed or not. It's about finding a location. So as part of this process, I think your input today really kind of solidifies the critical issue of the need and the urgency of having to have these implemented sooner rather than later. So I'm going to pass it to Jessica to maybe potentially clarify this process and provide some actionable next steps. And then we're going to go to Bianca and Anna and ensure that some of the questions that are also answered from the questions that were on the chat. Jessica?
Thank you, Dr. Ramos, and thank you so much, Annabelle. Definitely appreciate all the input, and to Dr. Ramos's point, we have heard this and we continue to, hopefully meet everyone's expectations and address these concerns. I think the one thing I just want to say directed at this particular project we're talking about is we originally did not have any funding in the CERP for this, and it was the CSC who voted to support shifting $1 million into this measure specifically to do this work. And so it definitely, this is a CSC driven thing, and we're responding to the CSC's desire to get folks to install vegetative barriers. So I just appreciate that support. To answer your question, we definitely we have to follow the process that's laid out before us for CARB. So I know that it's taken a while. We worked on the process. This is the same process we've had to work on for every measure that wasn't pre-approved by CARB. So we just have to do what's laid out before us by the guidelines for funding. And so we're grateful that we had the approval from CARB to do this already. And that at this point, we just have to go through the process to find partners. So I appreciate all the feedback I've heard so far today about partnering, about taking a walk, about getting all of this feedback on the map that I laid out. I do see some comments from Bianca. I'll just maybe jump ahead to some of the chat comments about getting some more feedback from folks, whether it's in person or maybe we do some phone calls and we directly reach out to folks. So I definitely want to continue to get all of that feedback that's necessary. That's not delaying the installation. We opened up that solicitation, meaning we're taking applications right now. We can still guide where those trees are planted through the feedback we get from you all. So thank you for being patient with us. A lot of the measures in the CERP go to the most polluting places, as you just mentioned, because the goal is to reduce pollution. We're hoping, like I said, in May to talk about how we can get folks into clean vehicles with a lot of incentives directly to residents. So hopefully that can help address that concern as well. And then finally, I'll just mention the oleanders is such a big point. We agree, we have to follow the guidelines. And so we're working to see if we can get how we can adjust that and make that a more available plant, or some plants that are more available. And we just appreciate everyone working with us on that. I see Ana Valle and then Bianca. And then I know we do have a couple of announcements later tonight. So I'm happy to continue this discussion at a follow-up meeting, Dr. Ramos, or even a subcommittee if needed.
Yeah, it might need a subcommittee, but I want to make sure that that's clarified. I see Annabelle has raised her hand. Annabelle, I want to make sure that the distinction is clear, that it's not a matter of whether or not vegetative barriers will be approved. Right now, it's in the solicitation phase to get someone to actually install them, because the process has to be followed. I see you've raised your hand again, so please want to make space for you to comment. So you can go ahead and unmute. think we may have lost Anabel. Go ahead, Bianca, and we'll allocate a couple more minutes to this so we can transition to some updates. Go ahead, Anabel.
Sí, mi nombre es Felipa Trujillo. Y sí, muchas gracias y me da mucho gusto que se haga eso. Pero ya tenemos aquí desde el año 19 en esta lucha y no hemos podido lograr nada. Porque sigue todo igual. Dieron el dinero que dieron 87 millones. Y Chapter fue uno de los escogidos para que lo arreglaran. Y hasta ahorita no hemos visto nada. Estamos pidiendo desde hace 4 años eso de las barreras verdes, porque eso va a ayudar mucho. Mi casa está alrededor de las huertas de almendra y hay mucha contaminación allí con los pesticidas. Entonces esas barreras verdes va a ayudar porque el pesticida se va a la tierra y luego hace un microbio que se lo lleva el aire y eso da la fiebre del valle. Y aquí hay mucho de eso. A mi esposo y a mis 2 nietos les ha dado esa enfermedad. Por eso es que estoy yo aquí en esta lucha, para poder ayudar a que se logre algo. Pero como les digo, hasta ahorita no he visto yo nada. Juntas y no se ve nada aquí en Chapter. Toda la avenida Chapter, ahí se necesita banqueta hasta la colonia mexicana, porque caminan los muchachos a la escuela y en el tiempo de lluvia es una lástima de ver cómo caminan esos muchachos. Entonces, si arreglan todo eso, estaría muy bien y estaríamos muy contentas aquí en este pueblo que estamos esperando que arreglen todo lo que necesitamos. Como dijo Anabel, banquetas, luces, todo eso se ocupa aquí y hasta ahorita no se ha hecho nada. Gracias.
Gracias, Felipa. Y gracias a todas. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. I think it's really important to ensure that, again, at the expense of repeating myself, want to make it crystal clear that the SERP is in the process of being implemented. You all have decided to allocate resources to vegetative barriers, so it's going to happen. Now, the process for how it happens is what we're engaging in right now, hence why we have to have these kinds of conversations. And I do understand and hear you that it takes a very long time because of the bureaucratic processes that are required as part of the implementation of AB617. So to remind you all of some of the things that you already have done, I see that Jessica Olson from the Air District has provided an image of the allocation of resources, the total funds that have been spent to date, so that you all can see how much funds have gone into this community already. Surely it's not enough, right? You all have expressed that there's many issues, many challenges, many things that need to be fixed. And so today's meeting is about saying, where should those barriers be implemented? They're going to be implemented. That's not up for debate today. It's where should they, so that everyone today can provide their input, even though you already have provided input, right? Because this is part of the open process. We understand that when we have these community input conversations, it does feel like it's a slower process because it takes time. So we ask for your patience, and I know we don't have time to wait, right? We're breathing these pollutants, the toxicity is there, and there's no waiting, but unfortunately, this is part of the process. There is still, as you can see there on the image that's in the chat, there's also how much is pending, so how many funds are still in the process of being allocated, hence what we're talking about today. So these are the funds that are coming down. So what I'm hearing, and I would like to see from you all, maybe it's about having a subcommittee meeting. To your point, Jessica, committee members would love to see if you'd like to continue this discussion, because right now it's 6:48. We do have a couple critical updates from some folks that would like to give you an update on what's happening. we're happy to move the readout of other updates that are not pressing to online, but do want to be very respectful of your time. As you all know, we take up time talking about these things, and it just slows down the implementation sometimes. So Bianca and Anna, would you all like to, put an action item of hosting a separate meeting to talk about the implementation of vegetative barriers and have that vegetative barrier committee happen? Or would you like to, change how we use the rest of the 15 minutes that we have left together?
Soy Ana, para mí no hay ningún problema que lo toquemos el tema después, no hay ningún problema. Yo sé que estamos cortos de tiempo.
Thank you so much, Annabelle. So what we can do is we're going to put an action item. Oh, Ana, sorry. Gracias, Ana. We're going to put an action item to put out a meeting to have a separate conversation. Also want to remind you that we have time allocated for agenda setting meetings. So if we want to bring this back for another meeting at the next meeting that we have in person, saw a lot of comments in the chat about continuing this as an exercise or activity that we do in person. That might be something that we could do at our in-person meeting. Want to make sure that there's community input in deciding how the next agenda gets set. So at this time, I'm going to, Jessica, was there anything else that you wanted to add about this comment before we move on?
Nope, I think that makes sense, and I look forward to, we'll schedule that really soon with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bianca, I see you're flashing your hand at me on and off. Not sure if you still have a question.
I have a question in regards to maybe having the subcommittee. This is an outgoing conversation, and I think it's very important right now. If it's possible, we could do a subcommittee this month or so we could just let everything that we have to let out, because if we wait another month, it's going to be something that is lingering, and instead of fixing the problem, it might make it worse. So I just wanted to address that. This topic is very important. We asked for it for a while already, and I know it's a continuing conversation, but industry has taken the biggest chunk of the 617. I know it's a big polluter, but at the same time, we can't hold them accountable. Like Annabelle mentioned, we have to hold them accountable for all their actions that they're doing. And if we don't see any progress coming out of here, this is the frustration that is coming out through community members. So I wanted to make that as a comment and a concern for the Air District to find ways to mitigate a little bit of the problems that are happening at the moment. Thank you.
We can commit certainly within the next 2 weeks to schedule something, to have the meeting within the next 2 weeks, I should say.
Great. So we'll put that as an action item and expect to see follow up. John, I see a comment from your hand is raised.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to be a part of that committee, and we agree it shouldn't linger. And we're working with the district to try to find ways to address this. So the sooner the better.
Awesome. We're looking forward to it. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. So we'll continue that conversation at that subcommittee meeting. In the interest of time, we see a lot of comments in the chat about from the public about potential alternative vegetative barriers to the oleander and to the laurel tree kind of shrubbery types of vegetative barriers. So I'm going to save that chat, and we'll make sure that gets included in the conversation at the subcommittee meeting. At this time, we're going to have folks who have updates to present those updates on the chat here. You can put your link. I see Carb has already done that. Thank you so much, Michelle. In addition to that, we'll be sure to send you the updates via email. And then we also have Jamie from the Air District who has an additional update. And Ming, I see you there. So if you want to put your update there in the chat, that would be great. Jamie, go ahead. We have lost Jamie. All right, not hearing from Jamie just quite yet, so I'm going to go through some other housekeeping. Oh, there she is. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I got called in. I got a phone call from my boss. I had to take it. Just very quickly. So we've been approached by an organization called Attune that does works with school districts really around the nation, but most recently they've been working with a school district over in Monterey, down in San Diego. They have a couple folks where they're piloting a concept that basically goes into schools and puts indoor air monitors in classrooms to check indoor air quality, and looks at indoor air quality and then gives schools tools on kind of comparing indoor air quality to outdoor air quality. We actually have a couple of the representatives here on the call. Serena Almaman, who's here, is one of the CEOs, and she's put together a little bit of a proposal for Shafter, and we wanted to loop you guys in. We're going to look at doing this at maybe one of the schools that has the AB617 monitors on top of it. It is just a pilot. It is very early days. It's about the same amount of money as those mini grants that we keep mentioning that you guys can apply for as well. It's a little less than $10,000. And we are looking to put that technology inside classrooms there in Shafter. And we just wanted to kind of loop you guys in, see if you had any thoughts about it. And then as we do it this one time, come back with information. Is it valuable? Is it something that we want to do more of? Do we want to expand it? That type of thing. So I just wanted to loop you guys in. If you have questions or comments about it, feel free to reach out to me directly, and I will put you in contact with the team that's actually doing it. I can give you some of their background information, and we can go from there. And Jess is right. This is a totally separate thing. This is not CERT funding.
Right, and just to clarify, that's why this update is at the end, where we have general updates about things that are happening at the different agencies. And
if it's very successful, we might come back and say, hey, do you guys want to fund this? But we want to see how it runs first.
Great, thank you so much, Jamie. I see other agency folks. Anybody else have a pressing update that could be announced now versus email? Okay, so we'll have all the agencies send updates via email, and we'll also send you the updates to the action item tracker based on the conversation that we had today. I'm going to mute Jamie. Hold on a second. And you'll be sure to have those available to you. Want to remind you that these conversations are very critical to helping move forward the implementation of AB617. As part of this agreement of implementation, it means that the community voice is present, heard, understood, and incorporated into how the SERP and the CAMP are actually implemented. So to help facilitate that, we have these meetings, and in addition to these meetings, we have our agenda setting meeting. What you can see here on the screen is that our next agenda setting meeting will take place on Monday, March 2nd at 4 o'clock. During this meeting, I strongly encourage you all to attend, and if you can't attend, to tell your colleagues who are part of the meeting and if they're going to attend, to share what should be introduced as an agenda item. So for example, we might hear more conversations based on what we learned today. Maybe we need more research on some of the topics that were discussed. You would like to introduce those. The agenda setting meeting would be an appropriate time to introduce those agenda items. In addition to that, our next meeting, the actual CSC meeting, will be held in person. We're very excited to be meeting you all in person, for some of you for the very first time. And we will have that. I don't know, Vanessa, if you can go to the next slide, please. Is it there? Monday, April, oh, it's there, I can't see. It's Monday, April 10th, sorry. Go ahead.
Wait, our
I think the May CSC meeting is the in-person, is that correct?
Oh,
not
yes, I'm like, I can't read right now for some reason.
I'm
my
gonna say,
computer-
woo, we can.
Yeah, my
Correct.
computer just went really blurry. My apologies. We'll have our next meeting in April via Zoom, and then in May we'll have ours in person. Thanks for catching that, Jess. I didn't want to send you to the wrong place. In addition to that, if you are part of the stipend program, we encourage you to connect with our team. You may have received several emails from our Hardware & Company team asking you to complete your W-9s and to update your preferences for receiving your stipends, whether you would like to receive your stipends via mail or direct deposit. So if you haven't updated that for 2023, please do so. In addition to that, we want to allocate just a couple minutes to just general public comments. I see that Laura has a comment about whether or not there are new oil wells in Shafter. I'm not sure if the Air District has a comment about that.
I don't believe so, but we can get back and make that a follow-up just quick. We could just call Laura with that follow-up answer and update the committee if we find anything, but I don't believe so.
Okay. Any other general comments from the public?
Hi, yes, I have an announcement. Hola, buenas tardes todos. Me llamo Ileana, soy una organizadora comunitaria para la Red de Justicia Ambiental del Valle Central. Estamos realizando una encuesta sobre la calidad del aire en Shafter. El propósito de la encuesta es para comprender el impacto de la contaminación del aire en las comunidades donde se implementarán políticas como AB617. Si les interesa participar, por favor, comuníquese conmigo. Voy a poner mi número de teléfono en el chat y también pueden comunicarse con César Aguirre. Por favor, ustedes también serán compensados por su participación y su tiempo. Si les interesa, por favor, voy a poner mi información en el chat. Gracias.
Thank you so much for that update. Anyone else have any general comments? All right, so our team has noted 7 action items. We're not going to spend time reading them today just because of allocation of time. We will post those on the website and we'll read them at the beginning of the next meeting. Please don't forget to attend the agenda setting meeting. We really appreciate your comments. And I really appreciate you sharing and making sure that we're thinking about the well-being of the community, and that's at the forefront of the decision-making that we make at these meetings. Thank you all for joining tonight. Really appreciate it. We don't see any comments on YouTube or any other comments on the chat. So at this time, we'd like to conclude today's meeting. And so we are officially over, and we will see you hopefully next week at the agenda setting meeting. Thank you so much.